Hi, I'm James Allen from Chronic Insights. I've got a great interview for you coming up with Ian Young, who's a member of a NAS branch here in the UK, and also a somatics instructor and a movement coach. And he has ankylosing spondylitis. So it was great to sit down with him, a fascinating conversation, and learned a lot about somatics and Pilates and lots of information and advice about how to use those techniques to really help people with ankylosing spondylitis. So I hope you enjoy it. I learned a lot, and it's coming up right now. So I'm here with Ian Young. He's a movement coach and interested in all sorts of things, somatics, Pilates, gut health, and lots of other things that we're going to be really interested in talking about in this video. So hi Ian, how are you doing?
Hello. Hi, good to see you, James.
Yeah, good to see you again. I really appreciate you coming to talk to us.
You're welcome.
Um,
Looking forward to it.
Probably the first thing that we should start with, because a lot of our viewers will have ankylosing spondylitis, which is something that we both share in common. You have AS as well.
Hmm.
So why don't we just start with a bit of a backstory? When did you first get your symptoms of AS? What were you doing at the time, and how did that progress? And how did that lead you to where you are now?
Sure, yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's quite a long story. I'm very old now, but it started in childhood. And it was very early, and there was kind of mysterious, unexplained swellings in my joints. Even as young as 9 years old, I had like swollen knee. I had pain in my Achilles heel, which I understand is actually quite common in very early ankylosing spondylitis. So you'd think that might have been a bit of a clue as to what was going on, but it was all just mysterious. I was told at 9 years old that I might have gout, which is like something that you tend to associate with, elderly men with big noses and a port habit, So it was all very
Yeah.
strange. um,
So
but it was
when was
really I
this?
was
When was this roughly?
So this was all when I was still at primary school. Sorry, that in terms of the yeah. So this would be like in the 70s.
So I mean, I guess AS has become more and more common and well known. Was it not so well known in the 70s, perhaps? Because
Yeah, possibly,
it sounds
possibly.
like, did
Yeah,
you see your GP initially
it would have
about it?
been GP. Yeah, yeah. I
And
mean, I
so
don't remember.
they
When
didn't
you're a child,
recognize.
it's all a bit of a mystery, isn't it? You don't really know who you're seeing or what. It's just like something weird's going on in your body and you don't understand it.
Yeah.
Um, and
Okay.
it's pretty frightening. You think, what's going wrong with me? Am I going to be able to run around still? That sort of thing.
Yeah.
But it really hit when I was 13 years old, actually. So, I had been sent away to boarding school, and I really wasn't enjoying it. And my parents were in the army. That's why I was at boarding school, and I went home to visit them in Germany, as it was at that time. So this was 1979, and yeah, basically, I woke up one morning with a lot of pain in one of my hips, and they took me to the local military hospital, which is an RAF hospital, and they did an X-ray, and they told me I dislocated my hip in the night,
Wow.
which obviously it wasn't, but that was their nearest stab,
Right.
and they put me
Right.
on bed rest and traction for 6 weeks, which
So we're talking, it must have been pretty severe pain for them to suspect a dislocated hip then.
it was very painful, yeah, and it literally happened overnight, and I really don't know what that's all about, really. All I know is that it was probably the worst thing they could have done, and that hip is still a lot worse than the other one as a result, really.
So what did they
You know,
do? What does that involve? Do you say traction?
Yeah, so it means
That's
you're literally in bed. You can't leave the bed for 6 weeks, and you have your legs strapped with a weight on the end of it. So it's a contraption with a kind of pulley system that, oh God. Anyway, so you can imagine you're a 13-year-old boy, you're running around, you want to live your life, and suddenly you're told you're stuck in bed, and you literally can't move. And the staff are all very nice, but it was a deeply frustrating experience.
yeah. I mean,
Very,
I can't. I mean, when you're that young and
yeah,
you had been away at boarding school as well, so
yeah.
I imagine socializing and just did you lose contact with friends and
Well, I did because I didn't go back to that school for several years actually. No, about a year. It took me a year to get back to school. Um, so anyway, I don't think I did the full 6 weeks in the end because they gradually did blood tests and came to realize that there was something else going on. That there was some kind of inflammation, some kind of arthritic condition was being triggered, and they call it juvenile rheumatoid arthritis at that stage. That was their best guess.
Mhm.
Um, and they tried various experimental treatments, including this really strange thing where they took like quite a lot of blood off and span the platelets off and put it back in. It's called plasmapheresis, and it was like a miracle. Like suddenly I felt great again
Really? I've not
for
heard of
about a
that.
week, but
Right.
it only lasts for about a week. And
Right.
you have to do it every week. And so they did it about 3 or 4 times, and then they were like, "Well, we can't really carry on doing this forever." Um, and so that yeah, I did eventually come out of hospital, but I was really weak, and I can remember seeing pictures of myself. I was really pale and thin, and there was obviously like a huge amount of inflammation in my body that was like really rampaging through the body, and really wasn't feeling great at all. Um, and it took quite a long time to recover. Gradually over the months, I started going back to school part time, but just like a local army school out there in Germany. And then eventually, my parents moved back to this country, and I went back to that school I was boarding at as a day boy. But again, it was like a gradual reintroduction. So it took a lot of recovering from. Um, and then it kind of all settled down. This is the weird thing. I had one more flare where I ended up with yeah, I think that was the Achilles heel time when they put a cast on my foot for a while. So that was not great. And I do remember, lots of really painful trips to the hospital where they didn't really have anything other than very painful steroid injections. So I have had steroid injections in more places than I would care to think about, including in the Achilles heel, which I think was
Ooh,
possibly the most painful one I can remember.
doesn't
Oh,
sound great. It doesn't sound
yeah,
great.
but eventually it did all settle down again, and then
But for no particular reason, was there a change in were you taking medication or anything like that at the time? It just went
it's a
away
good
of its own
question.
accord.
I wonder
I
if I
mean,
started.
I know these things
I
are
think I might
difficult
well
to
have
explain.
started on anti-inflammatories at that stage. I think I have been. I've been taking anti-inflammatories for at least 30 years. So I
Which
think
one do you
maybe
take?
I'm now taking Voltarol, which they keep trying to get me to come off because of the kind of the side effect risks of heart attacks and stuff. But it's always been the one that really makes much more of a difference to me than any of the others. So,
Hmm. I
um,
find Celebrex personally, I was put onto that, and I find it helps a lot. I know if I've missed one, basically.
yeah,
If
yeah,
I've missed one and I'll see it an empty pocket in my pill dispenser thing,
yeah.
and there's one left a couple of days ago, and I think, yeah, that's why I'm feeling particularly sore today. I miss my Celebrex.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? Because we'll probably come on to talk about anti-TNF and how great that is. But I still find, I still need the anti-inflammatories, which in a way is a bit weird. You wouldn't think you'd need it as well, but um, and just before lockdown, I was actually feeling an awful lot better. I think because of the gut health reset, and I did go on to naproxen for a while. But I think lockdown kind of, I'm not getting the swimming and things that I usually do. So I was just feeling that a little bit more. So they did let me go back on Voltarol, but they were pretty much saying, just for now, but you'll be going back onto something like naproxen again after a while. So who knows?
So after your sort of very difficult childhood, it sounds like
Mm,
dealing with this, and it
yeah,
started to subside, your
yeah,
symptoms. What happened
yeah.
after that?
So like in my sixth form and university days, I really wasn't too bad at all, and I was keeping fit and active. I was going swimming,
What did you do at
um,
university?
cycling. I studied English literature at Manchester.
Right. Oh,
Yeah,
cool.
I knew that that's what I wanted to do. I didn't know what I wanted to do afterwards, but I knew I wanted to do that. Yeah,
So,
I can remember like slipstreaming the buses on my bike, in Manchester. And
wow.
I was a little speed freak on my bike, and yeah,
So have
kind of
you
rode
always
about.
been quite active and fit?
Yeah, yeah. I
Um,
think yeah. I've always enjoyed walking, swimming, cycling, all that. My dad's really into all of that kind of thing. He was still riding his bike 100 miles a day in his retirement when he was 70. So yeah, it's definitely like a bit of a family ethos, really. Yeah, yeah.
so after university, what
Yeah,
happened
that was
then?
when it really got bad. I started work, so I got a job as a graduate trainee in the university library in Leeds, and yeah, I can remember I was living literally just the other side of the park from the university, and sort of day by day that walk, which is only like a 10-minute walk, was getting more and more difficult, and I was walking with my girlfriend, and I was gradually needing a little more and more support, kind of hanging on to her hand to help me walk. And eventually, at the age of, I must have been about 21 or 20, I was given a walking stick because my that hip that troubled me at 13 had got so bad, and that's a really hard thing to kind of cope with, really, because the kind of the association and the stigma, having a walking stick, that's what you expect old people to have, so it did it did mark me out. I did feel, because to look at me sitting, or you can't really tell I've got AS. I don't think people have said that to me, but it's just the hips got so bad, and apparently that's quite common. People, the younger you get, AS and any kind of arthritic condition, the more likely it's to affect the peripheral joints, hips and shoulders. So
Yeah, I
yeah.
know I know what you mean about the stick. I use one for best part of the year. I had
Oh, right.
to get
Yeah.
around when I had a really bad flare up, which
Yeah.
affected my hips and my ankles. So when you say the Achilles tendon, I know what you mean. It just out of the blue. It never
Mm,
affected my ankles before. For some reason, during this really bad flare up,
yeah.
my ankles were swelling up, and it was so painful to actually just stand on them. So I needed a couple of sticks. Sometimes some days what I could get away
Wow.
with one.
Wow. That's bad.
Some days I had two, and it was so I felt so self-conscious
Absolutely.
in
Yeah.
public
Yeah.
with sticks, and it's really when you take a step back on it and you think about it, it seems really silly to be self-conscious about these
About something
aids
you
that you
need.
need, but there's
Mm,
just something about having a walking stick, like you say, it's you, and I don't know what, like you say, partly um, you have this feeling that it's for it's an it's something to help people in old age. It's not something that
mm,
young people need, and because you don't see it very often, there's just this feeling that what do other people think? Do they look at me and think that's odd?
yeah.
And I don't
Yeah.
know about you, but I hate being the center of attention. Anytime when I hate my own birthdays.
Okay, okay. Yeah.
Because
No, I don't mind being the center of attention, but I don't like not for those reasons, you know.
I
Yeah.
I hate it when attention is drawn to me when for sort of external
Okay.
reasons that I'm not in
Okay.
control of, and
Oh yeah. Okay.
that was one of those things where I've had a stick and I was out and about, just really self-conscious about it, and so often I would either just not go out or not use the sticks, or
Mm,
and it just took some time. It took some time for me to just stop caring about what it looked like
yeah,
or what other
absolutely.
people
Yeah.
thought.
Well, I
So
had 20
did
years
you
to
get
get
to the
used to it
same,
myself.
yeah, did you get to the same
Um,
place where you just thought, oh well, I
I
need
just
this walking stick.
I just need it, and yeah, I have seen quite a few photos of myself over the years, and I noticed I did always kind of try to hide the stick though, you
Hmm.
know. I'd kind of subtly kind of try and push it behind so it wasn't there, you know.
Hmm.
Funny, isn't it? It's like I obviously was very self-conscious about it still, even after 20 years of using one. I just didn't like the fact that it's like sort of like this thing that marks you out as a cripple or whatever, doesn't it? Someone who's got a weakness, and I guess I was brought up stiff upper lip, don't show any weaknesses, you're a man, all those kind of messages, maybe.
Yeah, I don't know. I've spent, a while, a long time thinking about these kind of things, and the psychology of it is really interesting to me. I think, I mean, one of the biggest challenges I think with AS and a lot of similar conditions is the fact that it's invisible, but but it's still very impactful on your life. So it's always there. It's always a challenge just to do really simple things. But the
Mm,
fact that it's essentially invisible, like you say, people I know, I can imagine people looking at me who don't know me, just see a perfectly normal, healthy person. They don't
yeah,
see the
yeah,
aches and pains that are all over my spine and my hips. And so maybe that's another reason why we feel self-conscious, um, with walking sticks and the like, is because there's this mismatch between healthy, ordinary looking person and the walking stick.
yeah,
And that
yeah.
sort of uh, it's just difficult for it just makes it difficult, and it's
Yeah,
silly.
and but then is that a kind of cultural thing? Because in a way, it's like, well, there's a tool there to share your vulnerability and your pain with other people. But I always hated people who moaned about their aches and pains. So I resolved very early on in my life that I wouldn't do that. You know, fits in with the way I was brought up in a way as well. I think just to kind of hide it all, pretend everything's okay. Just I was always determined, always really determined that this disease would not defeat me. You know, and not quite sure where that came from, to be honest. It's a really big part of me. I've always fought really hard to overcome it. Um, and I've been doing quite a lot of self development work, personal development work recently, and coming to realize actually, that can be very very connecting to actually share your vulnerability and to actually admit, we all have struggles, and I tried to hide that struggle, and there was the stick that symbolized to me the fact I couldn't hide
Mm,
that struggle to
mm.
people. You know?
Yeah, yeah. I when I developed AS later than you. I was about 17 when it first started. And it was very, very gradual onset. So my knee swelled up really, um,
Mm,
massively just out
right.
of the
So
blue.
same thing, right? Yeah.
And it's funny hearing your story. It sounds very similar, and a
Mm,
lot of people with AS have the same onset. It's
mm,
one joint just swells up out of nowhere.
yeah.
Um, and but then it sort of settled down, and then it really gradually the sort of the lower back pain, and the hip pain and everything else just very, very, very gradually just got worse and
Right.
worse. And I was going through university as well, while it was when it was getting to this
Mm.
point where it was starting to be
Difficult.
difficult to manage.
Yeah.
But I just was, my attitude was just to power through to, because I didn't know what else to do. You know, I
No.
was
Yeah.
supposed to be at university. I had this degree that I wanted to accomplish, and I had this, career mapped out in front of me. So that's what I needed to do next. And the AS was just something that was in the way. So my
Yeah.
solution
Yeah.
was just power through it.
Yeah.
Go to your lectures, go,
Mhm.
power through the pain, and that worked for a year, couple of years. Um, but it only works for so long. There
Mm.
came a point where I just, it was, I was just, I got really tired of fighting through it and sort of keeping it all to myself as well. I didn't really talk to people about it um, because I don't know, it was kind of scary to admit the fact that I was in pain all the time.
Yeah.
I'm much better at it now, um, talking to people about it, but back then, just even the thought of me saying to somebody, "I'm in pain every day," would just be like a really frightening thing to say because almost by saying it, it made it more real.
Okay.
And I just wanted to pretend that it wasn't there. Um, so yeah, I can totally sympathize with your journey through
Yeah.
through that. And so you did eventually get through university, but do you
So
say that
university,
that's
I
when
was
it's
all right actually. It was when I started work, and I do wonder, the kind of the restrictions of sitting at a computer, and I was a, you know, library trainee, so
right?
you know, the 9 to 5 grind. I think I think it was that the 9 to 5 grind and the sitting at the desk. We didn't have computers in those days. We had Remington noiseless typewriters. Would you believe?
Awesome.
um, it was like I think that was the thing, and maybe part of me wasn't really very happy about actually having to fit my body into that kind of way of being. So that's when I got really bad, and actually that was when I got my diagnosis. So that was the usual 8.5 years or something.
So you're bang on average then,
I'm
it sounds
absolutely bang
like.
on average. Yeah, I'm just an average Joe. Yeah. Well, although I suppose I had earlier signs, when I was in my childhood. But yeah, from 13 to 21. Um,
So
and
you
then
were working in the library, and it was things
working
were
in
getting
libraries,
worse.
and it was really getting bad. I mean, luckily, the university is generally, or certainly was in those days, a pretty good employer, so they were very understanding. And we had at that stage a regional rheumatology hospital, rather like the Bath, the National Rheumatology Hospital,
All
and
right.
and they did the 3 week inpatient program for people with AS. So, we had one up in the north, Harrogate.
Wow, right. I didn't realize there used to be one.
Yeah, Royal Bath Harrogate Hospital, and it was kind of very old school kind of hospital, and it was almost like a spa hospital. They used to actually use mud, in the
Really?
intervals, mud on your hands.
Wow.
I think by the time I got there, they were using wax. So I don't know if you've ever had this experience. If you've got really swollen joints in your fingers, you can dip your hand into wax, and you just kind of repeatedly into this hot melted wax. You keep repeatedly do it till it builds up a layer, and then they wrap it in paper, and it's just very soothing on the hands. I don't know if it actually,
Really? I've never heard of this.
I don't know if it
Wow.
actually clinically did anything, but it was very nice. But to be honest, most of the time I was under the rule of a brutal physio who put us through hell for 3 weeks, really, and had us running around the hospital in the snow, and I'd basically given up running or anything like that, because I was in such a lot of pain. And it was probably the most pain I've ever experienced in my life. But it probably was the kind of kick I needed at that stage to kind of really get myself moving again. Um, And so yeah, you got a
So
little.
did you learn from that experience? Did you learn exercises and stretches and things to do?
Well, I learnt the physio exercises, and I did set the intention, and I would normally, I wouldn't be able to do them in the morning because I was so stiff. So I would get home from the 9 to 5 job, and I would get my mat out, and I would grunt my way through them on the mat. Um, and I guess they have kept me mobile to an extent, but yeah, it all changed when I did discover somatics, which we'll come on to later. Um, yeah, probably what the thing I really remember about Royal Bath is, you had lots and lots of really difficult exercise sessions in hydrotherapy, which I loved, physiotherapy, all these different sessions, and then you kind of went and collapsed on your bed for a bit. If you're really lucky, you got this thing called Vichy though. If you had your little card for the week, and if it said Vichy, you were very happy because this was you'd never get this on the NHS anymore. But basically, you went into a wet room, you lay down on a trolley, and there was a whole row of shower heads right above the trolley, which they then turned on, and then someone came in and massaged you
Wow,
under
that
the hot water
sounds
jets.
amazing.
Can you imagine on the NHS? So what a
That sounds
surprise! That
amazing.
hospital closed down. I did.
I
I,
think I
I
would
went
really
through
like
that
that.
inpatient thing twice. That you know.
You know, it's fascinating hearing about these sort of older treatments that
Yeah,
there used to
yeah.
be for AS. I guess while it was still they're still researching and figuring out what helps and what doesn't help.
Those weren't really specifically for AS. Like it was a regional rheumatology hospital. So I think the wax thing probably helped more people with rheumatoid on there. They get very bad swollen hands, don't
Mm.
they? So
So I find steam rooms immensely helpful. Whenever I walk into one, I feel this instant relaxation. There's something about the humidity that really gets the heat directly into my joints, and I can just feel everything relax and kind of go, oh, feels great. I wish I had one. I mean, my dream is to have a steam room at home.
well,
You
yeah.
know, I think I wish everybody with AS could have a steam room
A hot tub in a
at
in
home
a sauna,
that
yeah,
because
yeah.
it would just make such a big difference. Um,
Mm. I go to the university swimming pool has a sauna and a steam room, so I would until the COVID situation, I was going once or twice a week. I would go and have 10 minutes in the sauna, feel fantastic, swim a mile, go to the and pant in the steam room, afterwards, and that was just like I realised that actually I was the swimming was great. I love swimming, but it made such a difference that there was a sauna and a steam room there as well. Really,
mm,
really did.
mm.
Yeah, yeah.
So do you like to sort of warm up or warm down? Would you swim and then steam room or steam room and then swim?
Well, I always most virtually everyone else I met in the sauna had all done their swim, and then they did the sauna as a reward. I always, when I was working at the university, obviously I couldn't have quite so long, so I just had like 2 minutes in the sauna to warm my body, so that when I got into the cold water, I didn't really notice it. When I left the university, I would have 10, 20 minutes in the sauna and then swim, and I'd feel lovely. And then I've been charging up and down, so I'd be panting, and then I'd go into the steam room and just get all that
Yeah,
warm
yeah,
air into my lungs.
yeah. I would do the same. I would warm up first. I found it a great way to just loosen everything off before
Exactly.
I went swimming because I felt like I could swim better.
Yeah, I think so.
It was almost like literally a warm up, I
Yeah,
suppose.
yeah, totally. Yeah, because
Um,
otherwise you get into a freezing pool, and
mm,
it takes a little while to get used to it and get your joints moving, doesn't it? So
yeah, I think especially if you have rheumatic problems, that sort of sh cold shock that you can get
mm,
certainly doesn't help.
yeah,
So you had been working at the library and you were beginning to struggle. And I know now, obviously, you are a somatics teacher. You're a movement coach. You
Mhm.
discovered this thing called somatics, which
Yeah.
will explain to people because I don't think it's very well known. What happened? How did you get from
Yeah, so,
the working at the library and struggling to
so
where you are now?
from that period where it was really bad, I kind of had, I guess I had 20 years of just kind of managing somehow, and sometimes it would be worse and sometimes it'd be better. And I tried a whole load of different alternative therapies. I feel like I've done virtually every one I could try. And and I've been on a lot of drug trials, and none of them did anything. And then in 1999, I was very lucky that I was in Leeds, because Leeds was quite a centre for, um, you know, rheumatology research. And I'd been going to see the rheumatologist, and it'd been a pretty depressing experience, to be honest, going to see the rheumatologist. They hadn't got much to offer us, and you just talk about your health, and you'd realise how, it wasn't great, and I was still using the walking stick. Um, and a new professor came in, Prof Emery, and his view was, um, target arthritis early and attack it with the strongest drugs you've got, which was the opposite approach. Normally they kind of tried this. If that didn't work, take the next step up, try the next step up. His view, Leeds Early Arthritis Project, was to get in there and get it really early. And at that stage, they did, the only disease modifying drugs they had were things like methotrexate, which I did take, but I really didn't feel very good on it, I have to say. And then they said, "Oh, we really think the Dr. Martha Ortega met me, and she was like, I really want you to try this drug. This is going to change your life." And I was like, "Oh yeah, okay, yeah." And so I went into the hospital to start the drug trial, and they said, they hadn't told me this in advance. They said, "Right, we're just going to show you how to inject yourself."
Right. Oh,
And I
so
was
you
like,
turn up not
I
knowing
was
what to expect.
how to what? Oh my God. So that was kind of quite a thing to kind of get over the
Yeah,
first times you do it.
yeah.
So yeah,
And
this
so
was,
which drug was this?
so this is etanercept, one of
Etanercept, right,
the NF drugs.
right. And was this brand new at the time?
Yeah, I believe I was one of the first people in the country to get
Wow,
approval
wow.
to go onto it. And my inflammation rate was really high. I think it was, the sedimentation rate was something like 120, or the CRP one.
Yeah,
It's
that's
meant to be
pretty
below
high.
10,
That's
and
pretty
it was
high.
really raging still at that stage.
Yeah.
Um, and within a week, it just felt like this fog of pain and stiffness just lifted off. It was quite remarkable. It really was.
Wow.
So I could tell within the week, before I'd even had the second injection, that it was really going to change things. And it felt like I got my life back, to be honest. It really did. I I did go a little bit crazy. I think I started, going out dancing all night, and I took up whitewater kayaking. I trekked to Machu Picchu. Just like, I went crazy this decade. I really went for it. And yeah, so that was one element of the thing that really helped me recover. And then, um, after it's probably like after about 10 years of that, um, I started having real problems with bunions on my feet. And I think because of the way I was walking, because my hips have always been the worst thing. They've been very restricted because of the damage over the years. And I went into hospital, had a bunion operation, and that is an incredibly painful thing. It's one of the most painful things you can have done, apparently. And again, six to 8 weeks where you're barely out of bed, really. And you can imagine what that does to someone with AS. It got really, really stiff. And as it happened, like someone I knew opened a Pilates studio, and I contacted her and I said, "I wonder, I've got really stiff over these last 6 weeks. Do you think there's anything you might be able to help me with to kind of get back some of that lost stiffness?" Anyway, I discovered that Pilates is really, really good for the body, and I started having weekly sessions with her, one to one. And within the year, I was walking better than I'd walked for 10 years
Oh.
because, working on the equipment, so in a studio with Pilates equipment, the reformer in particular, working against springs. And she was also doing something called Hendrickson's massage on me, which helps to release the joints. And so at that stage, I was waddling with a walking stick, basically. I was told my hips were fused. There was almost no movement around my hips. My pelvis wouldn't move. And
So the etanercept had taken away a lot of the pain and the stiffness, but
yeah,
you still had this underlying amount of pain and stiffness and the restriction
I still had the damage,
due to the
basically.
damage and
Yeah,
the
and my body had responded to the pain and the damage by tightening up because that's what it does. All the muscles all around my hips and my pelvis had got really stiff to protect me from the pain, and I obviously hadn't wanted to move it because it was painful. But what we discovered working together, and I can remember her very early on saying, "I just want to do some sort of expectation management with you. That we'll be able to get so far, but then you've had damage, and there won't be much more we can do. We haven't hit that yet. You know, I'm still improving. I would say my movement after 10 years." You could just like that incremental tiny bit, tiny bit, tiny bit, tiny bit all the time, trying to get better and better. And what happens is you basically work your way through all those layers of holding to release the holding patterns around the joints, which the body thinks it's doing the right thing, but actually what I've discovered is that if you movement is always better than not movement, really. And gradually things got better. And I can remember her asking me what I understand now in the trade is called a naive question. And she said to me one day, "Oh, you're still using the walking stick, are you?" And I was like, "Well, that's a weird thing to say. Why is she saying that? I'm always going to have to use a walking stick." It was just beyond my comprehension that I would be able to not have to use it. But with working with her with the Pilates, and when I discovered the somatics, I was actually one day thinking, do you know what? I'm not actually really leaning very much on this walking stick. I wonder if I could manage without it. And it was probably the scariest thing I've ever done. I actually went into town on the bus without my walking stick. And I used to fall over quite a lot when I had a walking stick. And I sort of assumed that if I didn't have a walking stick, I would fall over even more. And then how would I be able to get up? Because, I'm not very good at getting up off the ground. And I used to use the stick to get up off the ground when I fell over. But what I discovered was if I did sort of trip and stumble, it's actually you've got more balance. If all your weight is on one stick
mm,
and it goes, you're over. If you stumble now, you can do all sorts of things with your weight to kind of shift, and so I don't really fall over anymore.
So
Uh,
with Pilates, you mentioned that the muscle's reaction to pain is to tighten.
mm,
Can you just explain why that is? Is that's a deliberate thing that the body does to protect you?
yeah, I mean, I don't know if that is the body doing it or whether it's just that you're feeling the pain, therefore you reduce your movement.
Hmm.
Maybe it could be that.
Hmm.
Um,
And so the,
and
the the Pilates exercises that you're doing, you mentioned loosening. Is it
yeah,
about loosening the joints and the muscles? Is that
yeah.
what?
So the massage was helping with that, and then so what we say in Pilates is it's a three-stage process. So first of all, you have to release, and it was, I guess it was particularly effective with me because I was also doing the somatics, and we'll come on to how about that in a minute. But somatics is very much focused on the release bit. So the combination of Pilates and somatics was what was releasing the tightness. And then what we do in Pilates is it's release, realign, and then strengthen. because I think what the mistake quite a lot of people do who just go to the gym, they just focus on the strengthen. But if you try and strengthen and you're not in the correct alignment, you actually put more strain on the body because you've kind of you're kind of out of balance. So I mean, both again, both somatics and Pilates, and this is why I like both of them. They balance you so that you're better aligned.
And is this to do with core muscles, core strength, when you're talking about alignment? Because is
No,
that right?
no, everyone I know, it's like I work in a Pilates studio, and it's if I had a pound for every time someone asked me that question, I would be a rich man. Everyone thinks that all Pilates is about core strength, and it really there's an element of that because the center, like I say, it's release, realign, strengthen. So there is an element of strengthen, and the core is very important because you have to you have to be able to control the center of your body in order to move better. But it's much more than that. It's actually the whole body getting aligned. So it's like, you know, are you turning your foot out as you walk? Things like that. Can you make sure that you're not turning your foot out so you're striking right through your feet? All of these things. What are you doing with your shoulders as you're doing that movement? Are you holding them up? This sort of thing. So it's kind of an
Right.
education process.
Right. Yeah, because I do notice myself. Actually, I noticed the other day I was doing just a stretch on my mat with my hips, and then I noticed I could go much further on one side than I could on
Yeah,
the other. There was this real asymmetry to it, and so I thought, right, that's taught me something that one side of my body, I guess it was my the flexibility of my hip
yeah,
was a lot different to the other one. And
yeah,
so is that part of the realignment that maybe I would get through
yeah,
Pilates? Um, because I imagine if there is a difference between my hips, it sort of changes my gait and my posture.
yeah. Really significant.
Right.
And it's also what we address in somatics. So
So tell me about somatics
well, the
and
story with somatics is I was attending the Pilates studio doing this one to one, and basically a woman came over from America to do a training on somatics, and my Pilates instructor really encouraged me to come along to it. And by the end of the day, I was totally sold. And I think this is the wonder of somatics is you can actually feel the effects in your body as it happens. And a lot of what we do in somatics is raising awareness of what is going on. So you can feel like if you'll do a movement, and then you will lie there and you will notice, and you will sort of feel like, oh right, yeah, okay, that side does feel very different from the other side. Oh, what's going on here? What have I done? What have I managed to achieve through that movement? And it felt very different. Like I was saying, all my life I've grunted through the physio exercises at the end of the day. But when I started doing somatics, immediately I wanted to get up earlier. And the first thing I do every morning is get on my mat and do my movement, you know. And it's its own reward in a way because I then feel better for the rest of the day. Why wouldn't I want to do that?
sounds
It was
sounds
like a
great.
no-brainer, really.
Yeah, yeah.
And
So
so
what
what?
is it about somatics um that you love, and how is it different to something like Pilates? Is there a philosophy behind it that
Yeah.
you could explain to people just to give people an idea of
Hmm.
what it's about?
So somatics came out of the Alexander technique and Feldenkrais, which are the kind of the first pioneers in the somatic world. But Thomas Hanna, who invented somatics, he identified that there's certain reflexes that get triggered in the body, um, which are kind of habits. And so one of the key ones is called the startle reflex, and it's exhibited by all mammals have this reflex, which is when there is a threat of danger or a loud bang behind you, at a kind of nanosecond level, your body will start to respond to it by closing in. So it's kind of like you're basically protecting the organs. And all mammals do this. Loud noise, you close in. Um, and that's in out in the wild world before we started sitting at chairs and tables and cars and things like that. That's fine. That's what you needed. And then what an animal would do is they would then shake for a while to get rid of the fear, and then they would kind of reset everything, and then they would get on with their day, and there would be no residual effect in the body. So we don't do the shaking, we don't do the resetting, and so we end up with repeatedly in our industrial society being put in these positions like typing, sitting in chairs, driving. All of these trigger this reflex in us, which gets kind of habituated and stuck in our body. And so Thomasana designed these movements to help us to get to that point and then to move out of it. So you're not stuck in these reflexes, and help it to release. And once you can help it to release, suddenly you feel so much better, because basically a lot of the time our muscles are working harder than they need to. So you'll have like muscles that you think are completely relaxed, but they've got 30 to 40% tenacity, tension in them. And so, an example is this big muscle here, this trapezius muscle and the levator scapula at the side that lifts the shoulder blade. You think, all right, it's quite relaxed. Oh, but if you feel it, it feels a bit tense. But what you can do is one of the really important things that we have, rather than trying to stretch it. Oh, why can't I stretch it? Can't release it anymore. We kind of do the opposite. We do what we call a pandiculation, where you squeeze it first, and you really squeeze it so that it's tighter than it was. So if it had 30 to 40% tension, and we're getting it up to 80 or something, and then you do a slow yawning release, and that helps the muscle to let go more. And so effectively, a lot of what we do in somatics is recreate that. So we tighten a muscle more than it was to start with, and then that slow yawning release lets it go. And suddenly, at the end of a class, you're standing there and you're aware, like, wow, I feel really great. The muscles have let go, and you're letting the skeleton support you, which is what it's there for. So, yeah, to me, it's funny because people do sometimes say, "Oh, it's magic. It's magic," and it's kind of like, it does feel like magic, but actually, I kind of don't let them get away with that, because it's an education. I teach people how to do these movements so that they can have a daily practice, so they can feel better. It's not just some magic that I'll perform on you. No, you can learn how to cope with these stress reflexes in your body and make yourself feel better. And it's an education process.
Well, so I've but so the listeners know, I've taken your somatics class for 3 weeks now, I think it is.
Yeah.
And I feel that. I do feel that. I know exactly what you're talking about when you're sort of lying on the mat and you've done one side of your body, and sort of feel the difference on one side of the body compared to the other, and that feeling of the difference it's really quite it's fascinating, and it makes you realize a lot more about your body and your muscles and your joints and how they work. So I've really grown to like somatics as well, and I'm definitely going to continue using it. And I would encourage all of our viewers and listeners to research it and look it up, and get people like yourself to teach them, because it's just another one of the tools in the toolbox
Yeah.
for people like AS to help relieve suffering and pain and stiffness and get back a bit of mobility. And
Mm.
the philosophy behind it also makes sense from a psychology perspective. So when I was at university, I did psychology and learned a lot about evolutionary psychology, how the human species evolved,
Mm.
and the what it made me realize was how out of place human beings are in this artificial environment that we created for
Yeah.
ourselves,
Yeah.
and how really unusual it is to imagine. We evolved in a hunter-gatherer society where we would spend most of our day walking, running, hunting. Um, those were our main concerns. Just being in nature and looking out for the tiger around the corner
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah.
And the difference between that and that's obviously what our physiology has evolved to be adapted to, is being in nature and surviving in a natural environment. And the difference between that and what we typically do day to day, like I spend a lot of my time in front of the computer. I'm
Exactly.
indoors.
Yeah.
I'm sat in my chair, and I've got all of these things that I'm thinking about: work, emails, social media, all of these stimuli that come at us, and it's so detached from what our bodies are designed to deal with, that I feel that sort of tension that builds up during the day. And I feel it now. I was sitting
Mm.
here
Yeah. Yeah.
listening to you talk about how the sort of philosophy in somatics, and I realized, yeah, I'm really tense here, and I can feel my shoulders rolling forward.
Yeah.
I'm sort of
I have,
in
I
this
have
sort of,
a friend who's a running coach, and he says he's actually got rid of all the furniture in his room, so he doesn't sit on a chair anymore. He just kind of he'll squat or he'll sit on the floor, and that's what we were designed to squat. That's the
wow, that's
what we should be
that's an interesting
squat like.
philosophy. I
Yeah,
mean, obviously
but
with
that's if you put
AS,
it
I do
down,
feel,
exactly. It's that deadlines, alarm clocks, looking at computers, all of these things trigger these reflexes in our body, which were there, from prehistory really, and now we get stuck in them, and so somatics is a wonderful tool to learn how to cope with the way that we live our lives, and I think you also build awareness so that you are more aware as you're sitting there. Oh, hang on, what am I doing? Am I bringing my head forward? Maybe I should. Oh, yeah, maybe I should just relax those shoulders a bit as well. Why am I tensing those shoulders? Things like that. So with somatics, it builds awareness so that you perhaps don't trigger the reflexes quite so much in the first place, and then even if you do, you've got tools to learn how to move out of them. Yeah.
so Ian, I'm just coming to the end of my second half an hour, so just got to
Right.
reset my camera. So we've
Yeah.
been we've been going for an hour, a little bit more actually, because we were talking about websites.
Oh yeah, of course.
Um, how are you? How are you doing?
Yeah, I think we probably need to stand up and move around, to be honest. Yeah, but I'm happy to carry on talking, but I definitely need. I could feel that in my
We'll
body as
go
well.
for it. Have a bit of have a bit of a
Yeah.
move around.
Yeah.
I'll just reset my
Yeah.
camera,
Mm. Yeah.
and yeah, right. So we're back. Ah, so yeah, we were both a little bit needed a bit of a stretch there.
Yeah. My favorite stretch after I've been sitting a long time is just this one. Just separate the. Oh, it's just great.
So
Feels good.
that's sort of opening the shoulder
Yeah.
blades.
Kind of raise one up more than the other. Yeah.
That does
Yeah.
feel
Just
nice.
get those shoulder blades moving. The shoulder is a very strange joint. It really is. But it's also where we keep a lot of our tension. Particularly these muscles here. They are connected to the part of the brain that processes emotion. So they've just discovered that in neuroscience.
Huh.
So that's why you have the whole world on your shoulders. Really interesting fact.
Wow.
The other really interesting fact, I think, we were talking about evolutionary psychology. They couldn't work out why there's such big muscles here because they don't seem to do a great deal. And they've worked out that it was when we were fish. It was for lifting our gills so that you could breathe. If you think how it lifts your
Wow.
ribs up, why would
I
you want to do
mean, this is one of the things that I've really enjoyed about learning about somatics and about Pilates is I feel like everyone who has a rheumatic condition really needs to become a student of the body and
that?
anatomy and how your body works, because understanding all these things and getting
Mm,
insight into how it all works can just really it can really help you
definitely.
understand
Yeah. And
what
what
you're
you won't
doing
know is
right
that
and what you're
through
doing wrong.
somatics, it's that thing of, you train in one discipline and you have to have a label so that people know it. And, you know, you call it somatics, but actually I bring in other elements of other trainings that I've done, including something called the Franklin method. And the Franklin method is exactly what you've just been talking about. It's called embodied anatomy. And it's like the theory is, if you understand how your body is meant to move, and you sort of get it really in your brain, and you can even model it with your hands sometimes, then you actually move better as a result. Eric
Mm.
Franklin, it's I do, you know like to bring in elements of that when I can as well. It's great stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I see overlaps with all sorts of things. I mean, with the body scans that I've done as
Mm.
part of mindfulness meditation,
Yeah.
I find that overlaps a lot with somatics. And when you were talking about the how your muscles often are working much harder than they need to be, that's what I
Mm.
notice when I do a body scan, which is when for people who aren't aware of a body scan, is when you're trying to meditate and you sort of mentally go through each part of your body and try and relax it and understand how it feels. And I keep I'm always surprised when I go through a body scan and I feel like I'm lying down, I must be relaxed, but then I really focus on a shoulder and I realize actually there's tension there, I can drop
Mm.
it a bit,
Mm.
or there's tension all over the place. And yeah, so a lot of overlap, I think, with mindfulness and
Yeah.
meditation,
And
which
certainly, I kind of call my morning practice, my somatic practice, it's like a moving meditation, because a lot of the time I'll do it, you know, with my eyes closed on my own, with no sounds, and it, really tuning into what's going on in my body. And maybe emotions will come up as well. And um, there is a component of somatics where that does directly address the emotional issues as well, called somatic experiencing, which not something I've trained in, but it's powerful. And it goes back to using things like the shaking and the resetting of the body to cope with trauma. So there's so much to it. The wisdom of the body. Yeah,
yeah.
listening to the body.
So I think we should wrap this up because we both probably need a bit of a stretch after this. I know I do. I feel like I'm gonna go and do some somatics actually on my mat
Yeah, well, great stuff. Yeah.
while I'm thinking about it.
The one, the,
Um,
the other one other thing I was going to talk about was just briefly was just the gut health side, because
yes, yes. Tell me about that because you've tried did you call it a reset?
yeah. So
And you found
I
that that
guess
helped a lot.
having said, I'd tried every kind of alternative medicine kind of approach. And, I have tried fasting in the past and things like that, but I could never work out that there seems to be so much conflicting advice about food and all of that, and which you should and shouldn't eat. And, you know, uh, it just seemed too, I think partly it seemed too baffling to me. Um, but partly also a lot of people had said give up sugar. And I think actually I was a bit of a sugar addict, and I look back to my childhood and I think about, I was the youngest one. I was the boy, and maybe I got quite spoilt and probably had more sugary treats and creamy things and custard, and all of that started quite early on. And I understand now from the training I've done, that basically inflammation starts in the gut. That's where your immune system is governed from. And so earlier this year, I did a gut health reset, and again, it just was absolutely remarkable in terms of reducing the, you know, I've said this so many times now. How much pain and inflammation can I reduce? But yeah, it did again reduce the pain and inflammation in my body. And so,
What did that involve? What is a gut reset?
what basically essentially what it is you eat no sugar, no carbohydrates, no processed foods of any kind. So essentially, for me, I'm a vegetarian, so it was essentially eating fruit and vegetables and nothing else. And then the company I work with, it provides supplementation to help you kind of cope with that, because obviously a lot of us tend to fuel our energy from carbs and sugar. And so once that's taken away, you kind of do need something to support you during that 21-day reset. And basically, what you're doing is you're taking things like probiotics and prebiotics to feed the good bacteria in your stomach, and completely eliminating those things, you're starving the bad bacteria that give you the cravings and that cause the inflammation. So at the end of the 21
Things like
day,
kefir. When you say probiotics and prebiotics, is
well, it's yeah. So the company I work with, it actually it gives you supplements to take that have probiotics and prebiotics in them.
in like a tablet form
Yeah, in a
or
tablet
something.
form,
Right.
or there's
Yeah.
also shake as well,
Right.
and there's also kind of liquid concentrated things as well, like chlorophyll, because basically our soils are so depleted now that if you had a salad in the 1970s and then you tried to recreate it, the amount of nutrients you got out of that salad from the 1970s today, you have to have like 47 salads. That's how depleted our food has become. I mean, it's just staggering, really, when you think about it.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's
it's frightening. It really
that's
is.
that's pretty crazy when you think about it.
It is.
I
It
mean,
really is.
I wonder if part of the reason also is sort of modern farming
It
methods,
is. Yeah,
sort of
modern farming methods,
intensive.
nitrogen.
It's all about growing as much as possible as fast as possible,
Yeah,
not necessarily growing sort of high nutrient, high quality
exactly.
food.
Yeah.
So that's
Yeah. So
yeah.
at the end of
Wow.
21 days, I just had so little pain and inflammation in my body, and I think I'd really, changed my gut bacteria. And so, basically, I've given up sugar. I'm not having sugar anymore. I gave up alcohol for 6 months. I, I look at a biscuit in a very different way now. I used to be a bit of a, I'd always be having pastries and biscuits and things, and I now look at them and they kind of look brown and horrible to me now. I want fresh fruit and veg. I want lovely things now. And it's really changed my outlook, and I think it has really changed my gut bacteria. So I feel
I
it's
think
such a good thing to be doing.
it's difficult when you're in a lot of pain and fatigue and um because obviously to eat that kind of diet, it does require a bit of um, cooking, a bit of work in the kitchen.
Yeah, yeah,
Preparing vegetables because working with fresh stuff, and I think that's part of the reason why a lot of people um, just don't
I
uh,
guess
don't
so.
try
Yeah, I
these
guess
things.
I've always done that anyway, though, because I've for like the last 30 years I've been growing my own veg and fruit. So
Right,
that's just what I do anyway.
right. So you're
But
kind of
I then
used to that.
would also supplement it with like biscuits and cakes and things, because I like them.
So I'm just thinking about, the people who are really struggling with pain and fatigue and thinking, you know, to be able to change my diet like that, it's going to be really difficult. And I can see this sort of, um, are you there? I think I've lost you. Oh, I think Ian's frozen. We've lost Ian. See if I can get back. See if we can come back. So what I was going to say is I've been in that situation where everything seems difficult. Even just getting out of bed and onto the sofa would be this massive mission. Um, and the idea of having to actually make my own food would just be another task that I would really struggle with. And I think that this maybe a solution to that is thinking about this sort of ladder that you can go up, where the first step of the ladder is probably doing things like somatics and Pilates, even just very small movements that you can do sitting on the sofa or lying in bed, just to give you that little bit of extra strength, flexibility, um, and getting doing things like going. You could possibly get deliveries of your fruit and veg to the house. Hello, so I was just saying, there's I was describing the sort of ladder of steps that people can take to get from like a really bad situation to a better situation, and I think at the base is things like somatics and Pilates to give you a bit of strength and flexibility back. Because a lot of the things that I've learned in somatics are things that I can do just sitting on the sofa or in bed. You know, they're not big movements. They can just be small things. Yeah. Um, and then maybe higher up the ladder, there's if you can get well enough to be able to be in the kitchen and stand and chop your vegetables and stuff. Um, that's the sort of, there's a pathway there to we're not talking about curing AS or taking away the pain and fatigue. We both still have pain and fatigue, but
Yeah.
it's just about working towards a better situation. And
Yeah, I don't have
gut
the
health
fatigue
is
these
one of
days,
those.
and that's one of the things that people notice when they do a lot of somatics is they have more energy, and the reason for that is just what we were talking about a little while ago about how if you're not using your muscles all the time, then to hold those muscles with 30 to 40% tension actually takes quite a lot of energy.
Mm,
If you're not doing that, you suddenly you've got more energy available for you to live your life without
that's
wasting it
interesting.
on holding
That's
tension in your
interesting.
muscles.
I haven't even really thought about that, but
Mm.
that does make sense because it is just, you know, a lot of days with AS, it just they feel just exhausting just to be, just even if you're not doing anything,
I
just
do
sitting
I do
down
remember that, but it's not an
doing simple
experience I have these
things.
days. I have so much energy; it's untrue, really. Yeah.
Wow. Well, that's great to hear. It's just so great to hear a story of somebody who's had AS and gone through some really difficult times. You've obviously experienced a lot of pain and a lot of discomfort in your life, but
Yeah.
to see you now, and it sounds like you're really enjoying life and
Absolutely.
you're in a much better position than you were now.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
It's so inspiring to see, and I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us and
My
explain some
pleasure.
of the things
Yeah.
behind your
I
successes.
see it as my life's purpose essentially now to share what I've learned. Yeah.
Well, maybe I'd love to have you back, talk to you again about this sometime soon. If people want to learn more about you and what you do, I know that you're the chairman of a NAS branch. So NAS,
Correct. Yeah.
who are watching who aren't from the UK, NAS is the National Ankylosing Spondylitis Society. Although actually now they've changed
Oh,
the name, that it's the National Axial
oh,
Spondyloarthritis
well done.
Society.
I haven't managed to
Uh,
get that one in my head yet.
so they're trying to change the name to this umbrella term, um, axial spondyloarthritis, which includes ankylosing spondylitis and non-radiographic
Yeah. Before you've
axial
seen the damage. Yeah.
spondyloarthritis. It's it, it's a bit of a mess in terms of namings.
I wasn't in favour, I have to say. It
I,
just confuses the hell out of me.
so yeah, so you're the chairman of one of the branches of NAS, which
Harrogate,
do
yeah.
physio. Come, people with AS come together and have meetings around the UK, and do things like hydrotherapy and exercise. So
Love
you're
hydrotherapy.
the chairman of the Harrogate branch,
That's
is
right.
that
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because hydrotherapy is, if you can get access to a hydrotherapy pool, highly recommend
Really
it.
nice.
I know you do
Oh,
too.
I love it. Yeah.
Um, I've only been lucky enough to get access to it a few times, and when I have, it's really helped. When I was in severe pain, when I had both the sticks and just walking was a challenge. The thing that got me kick started was getting access to hydrotherapy.
Mm.
As soon as I stepped into that warm pool, everything changed. I could suddenly start moving again. It was just one of
Yeah.
those things
You
that
just move so much better in warm water like that.
mm,
The flotation helps and the warmth helps, and yeah, you just feel so much better and you can move better. So yeah, I love it.
yeah.
Yeah.
So you're on. I think you're on Facebook as
Yes,
well.
Ian Young Movement Coach on Facebook, and yeah, I'm just in the process of setting up a website. So hopefully, ianyoungsomatics.com will be coming soon, but not quite there yet.
Okay, so yeah, if you're interested in somatics and want to learn more and maybe take some classes, there you go. Ian Young, movement coach and somatics teacher. Thank you very much,
Hey,
Ian.
great, good to talk to you, James.
I've really enjoyed this.
Yes,
So
me too.
thank you
Yeah,
very much.
and I'll see you at
And
class later.
yeah, see you at class later.
Look forward to it.
Okay, cheers,
Right,
Ian.
have a good day.
You too. Bye bye. So that was Ian Young. Really appreciative of Ian to come and talk to us. I really enjoyed that conversation. It's fascinating. I learned so much about somatics and Pilates, and it's just great to hear another person with AS, their story, and so many things sound so familiar to what I've been through, and I expect a lot of the things sound familiar to what you've been through if you have AS as well. So you can find Ian on Facebook. Look out for Ian Young and ianyoungsomatics.com. You can find me on Instagram at Chronic Insights. You can find my website, chronicinsights.com, and where you can find out about my symptom diary app that I've made for Android and iOS. Something that I made for myself, but I think other people will find it useful as well, just to keep track of your symptoms, pain, fatigues, and then when it comes time to go to the doctor, you can print yourself out a report. So look out for that as well. So I hope you enjoyed this, and I'll catch you next time. Okay, bye.